let's kick things off. I want to welcome uh, everyone that's participating, especially the home care agency owners. God bless you for what you do. You know, we had our agency for 6 years. It was just wonderful experience and the relationships we made. So today, I have the honor to welcome Matt Towler, Vincent Bankowski, and David Sexton. You'll learn more about them, but they're three of the finest people we got to know. They're just, if you're, my mom my mom went to a community, I wouldn't hesitate in a second to bring my mom to David, Vincent, or Matt. Their heart, the way they represent their communities is just amazing. And really, when you're going into a community, it's the ED that's at the point of the ship. They set the tone. You'll get the feeling from them. And when you meet these three guys, you have the honor to meet these guys. They're amazing. And I look forward to them speaking from the heart. If you're sitting across the table, what they would want to hear from you to be in the game. So today, on our agenda, I'm going to let Gina kick off, just so we're speaking the right language, what we call community-based home care, and compare it to traditional home care. And then I'm going to take the lead from Gina. This is my love, was business development, relationship marketing. So I'm going to speak to our personal experiences. And for those that don't know, Gina and I, in our former agency, Where Senior Care, which we sold in 2020, we were in 4 communities. We never had the honor to be in Matt's community, but boy, we tried. But Matt actually opened the door to David, and we tribute Matt. Really, that's how we got into Ivitzwood with David. And Vincent, we had multiple experiences, which is wonderful. And so I'll let them talk about their communities, but I'll cover some techniques, and I've got some examples, but really we want to leave a lot of time, 7 minutes or so each. We'll just see how it goes with Matt and David and Vincent. That's what you want to hear from them. And then we'll just open up to a Q&A.
And people can put questions in the chat if you'd like to. Mike is going to monitor that.
Yes, please do. If you want to throw it out there. I asked Mike if something came up that he felt was relevant, that we'd address it in that moment instead of waiting for the end. So I'm going to turn it over to Gina just to kind of do the community-based home care 101.
Right. So I think it's really important to make sure, like Tim says, that we're all speaking the same language. Because I'm a nurse and I have worked in facilities, which are skilled nursing and assisted living. So what we're talking about today is independent living communities. We've had many an executive director cringe when we refer to them as facilities. Now some do, but you may want to start with communities. So the difference is the communities oftentimes offer dining services, transportation, housekeeping, many of the things that we do in home care. What they don't offer, can't offer, is personal care, help getting dressed, showering, medication reminders, escorts down to the meals, meal delivery. And so these folks just need a little bit of help. Typically, sometimes they grow to need more help, but the visits are short. So they only want half an hour, 45 minutes. We offered visits as short as 7 minutes. So what we had to do was you schedule many clients to one caregiver. Agencies, typically a smaller community, be 20 clients, and you can have up to 100 or more, depending on the size of the community. So imagine we're blessed to having a very large community, Davis community, where we had up to 90 clients at one time. We had 8 caregivers in the morning, 6 in the afternoons, and 2 overnight, just to the residents who were our clients. Not everybody gets services. And imagine they all want their visits at the time they want, with the specific things they want done, and everybody's different, and it's different on different days. So that's what we're talking about, community-based care. So as we had,
that was my title, guys.
Scheduling nightmare. Our first community was smaller. It was about 25 clients, and we couldn't do it in our platform. Our platform was great. It was Clear Care, WellSky now. Wonderful, worked great. Couldn't do this. We couldn't manage it at all. I kept saying, I need the big picture. So when we couldn't find it, that's where we are today. Yeah. That's right. So we had to build it. So, but that's for another time. So community-based care, caregiver assigned to many clients, times where they want to go, specific times, specific tasks, and you got to schedule those caregivers efficiently in order to know if you're profitable or not. So,
Right on. I mean, you may hear from our EDs, but one of the things that they value most is that the residents get what they want. It's custom and it's tracked, and that's a big feature of whatever technology you so choose. You really got to be able to do it at that level in real time. It's certainly a challenge. So this is the fun thing. Now I get to talk. I love this. I miss it. I miss being part of the community from a home care perspective, because it's about relationships. But number one, I want to just our advice, Gina and I advice to you, and we live this, is make sure before you go into community care that your current business has a solid foundation in place. You're not cartwheeling out of control or winging it. You're in a stable position. Your staffing is solid. Your processes are solid. Your business is in good shape. And the reason I'm saying this is that those that are out there right now are probably shaking their head in a positive that this is a different business model.
mm-hmm.
It has unique challenges. The staffing is, you can see from what Gina, is different. The caregivers have different capabilities. So you've got to look at it. I'm now going into this new business line. And one, you got to know what you're doing and understand what the ED expects, how many residents you're going to be caring for. Your staffing is kind of ready to go. So it's almost like, think of it, you're on an aircraft carrier, and yes, I'm ex-military, use a lot of analogies, but think about your Tom Cruise and you're on the deck and you do this when you're about to be launched. You better be ready, and the engine needs to be going. You know what I mean? So you don't end up in the water. It's just that you want to have all the things in place with your business to go green light, because we had an instance where we thought we had weeks to prepare, and the ED called us and said, "Can you come tomorrow? I'm announcing you as the home care agency." So, it's the old Boy Scout, be prepared. And there's a unique staffing. Love to help you out. We have questions about what we did, how we did it. Be happy to talk about it. Next one, homework. You need to study the property. And that's not only speaking to Matt or David or Vincent. Of course, you're going to do that and understand who they are, what their desires are, and so forth. But where do you park? What does it look like? How many residents? Who's on site there as part of your home care team, like in home health, hospice? Know everything there is about that property, including pricing, because you're going to compare and contrast living in a community versus living at home. You just need to be a student of, if you think about you're going to take the test and Matt's going to give you the test on HRA carry, be prepared to pass that test. And you need to understand everything about that, every amenity, how they do things. And you can talk to Matt, but there's others that are in the circle of support you can talk to that know Matt. Hospice, home health, senior move managers, geriatric care managers. There's a whole list of people that kind of hover around this community, adding to its success. Competition, yeah. I think the most qualified ones is where you're going into it and the competitor is failing. And yes, that happened to us in several instances. In Vincent's case at the reserve, no, that was brand new. And we had Vincent, we were known quantity. And, Vincent, by good graces, said, "Come on in." But why, we've talked to we didn't view other home care agencies a lot as competitors. We viewed them as friends. And we talked to them. What were your struggles? What was going on? What were you struggling with, to get an understanding of what's happening? Because when then you go into the community, you want to obviously be able to address the problems they can't seem to get through.
We had one where they wanted us there around the clock. They didn't have overnight visits. So we couldn't put caregivers in with no revenue coming in. It didn't make a lot of sense. What they were asking for did not make good business sense, which is probably why the other agency was pulling out. So we declined that one. There was no coming to terms that that wasn't the way we were going to provide help. So
Yeah. We have another webinar coming up, finding an IL and closing the IL. We'll talk about unsolicited proposals, but I think Matt, David, Vince, all of us will agree, expectations. All right. Make sure there's realistic expectations. Don't overcommit or do something you think you can't deliver. And give honest feedback to the ED, because they may benefit too. And you can educate them just like they're educating you. This presence one will be a frequent visitor and supporter. I'll cover next. That goes into the next bucket. This is a really good one. The community on-site healthcare partners. Each community will have what we call a circle of support and preferred providers. OT and PT, a lot of communities will have an on-site office. Not all, but on. And there'll be a company like Legacy, for example, in the building, or Bayada, a number of players. Hospice, there's multiple hospices, but some are more prevalent than others. And understand who's in there. You want to meet them. We got into one community because of a Medicis. That was Stone Ridge and Cary. And they were the selected on-site home health and had a good reputation and relationship. And when that home care aide started to fail, she said, you need to talk to Tim and Gina. They're really good. And they did. And we got in. So it's, again, relationship marketing, know the property, know who the selected players are in terms of the continuum of health. And finally, the prep work, big picture. Think about your approach where, whether you're asked for or not, you're preparing a proposal to be the on-site home care agency. If you think that way, it's really good, because you've got to have all the pieces covered and how you're going to meet and excel the needs of that community as the on-site partner. And I emphasize partner. You are a true partner. I think Matt has a great term, and he'll throw it out there later of what that means. But you are a partner, not a home care agency. You're part of the success. You're part of the family. You want to make them successful, and it starts with the sales process and people coming in, and then hopefully doing a great job so people can stay where they want to stay longer with the highest quality of life. That's where you come in. Think about that unsolicited proposal and how you're going to do that. And by the way, the technology is a key part, that you demonstrate knowledge that this is an advanced ski trail, not a green one. It's advanced, and how you're going to attack it and how you're going to be successful. So think about doing a proposal, and I'd be happy to share some of the samples of what we did, because we did that, whether we were asked for or not. It helped us. Relationship marketing. Micah just put up a little poll. This is about relationships. Those in home care, I'm sure you can identify with me. This is about forming relationships in the community. And be prepared that it may take you years to get into a community. That's just the way it can happen. But when I gave you an example with Matt Towler, when he was with Kisco, and we went to a lot of events at his property. And it was like, Matt, wave my hand. Matt's like, good to see you again, Tim. How's your on-site home care agency doing? They're doing okay. I go, great. Because you're not going to force yourself on them. Matt's got a good solution. So, but make frequent visits. So we would go to those wine and cheese events by the communities. We would go to charity fundraisers where they were too, or look to see if we can joint sponsor. Alzheimer Works, caregiver recognition events. Know what the community is doing, because they're trying to get out and bring people into their community. How can you help? Be there. Because one day, if there is a home care agency, they may falter. And guess who's at the top of the Rolodex to call? You. So invest that time. And it's fun too. I used to like go get a free glass of wine, or a breakfast bagel at Woodland Terrace. um, the sponsor educational webinar events. This is one of the best. We formed a circle we call Team Elder Care, and we partnered with all the leaders in the circle of support in geriatric care management, aging life care professionals, senior move managers, estate planners, senior lawyers, um, fellow home care agencies that we thought highly of, that we referred to each other when we couldn't get a case. We would do education events, and I'll share a couple of samples. I'll have to stop to share so I can show some samples. But people remember you. Instead of dropping by cookies or a brochure, educate, bring value to the property in some form. Work groups and organizations. One example I'll show you is we formed a power of attorney work group at one property. We weren't even in the property. They loved the idea, and we sponsored it, and we rotated with speakers coming into the community. We would sponsor it as Aware Senior Care, but we'd have a featured speaker, whether it be elder law, geriatric care manager, estate planning, counselors, because it's tough to be a POA. I can attest to that myself. And we did a power of attorney work group, and we even had a Facebook page for it. Really popular with a community, and yes, we did eventually get into the community. Again, it's planting that seed, and put yourself in the mindset: what can I do to add value to Matt's property or Vincent's property? What are some of the things that would be helpful? It could be Alzheimer's education, dementia education, geriatric care management. See, there's a number of topics, falls, eat well. There's a number of times, I'll share all this with you, but that really helped us. We got a reputation as an asset in the community, an educator, and the communities all talk to each other, and that could lead to your success getting into each community. So what I'd like to do right now, and Mike, maybe you can help me with the spotlight. I want to introduce our executive directors, our Rush Band of today, and you're going to hear from them. And I don't know, Mike, if you do, Matt Towler is executive director of Atria Carey. Vincent Bankowski, executive director and Raleigh of Arena at Bedford Falls. And David Sexton, executive director at Abbotswood. And great guys, just wonderful souls. What we've asked is to talk about their property. Each one just so you can get a little background, because every property is unique in what they do, and then give you some advice. So at this point, let me see who's up first in the lineup.
It's Matt.
It is Matt. Matt Towler, you're up.
Thank you so much. Pleasure being here today. Pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, and pleasure also to be with Vincent and David as part of your panel here. I great presentation so far. With the comparisons to Rush, you had a Top Gun reference. So I'll, throw in a Goonies and Star Wars reference, and I'm home. But thank you so much for today. Our community is we're out of the three of us. I'm the brand new kid on the block here. Our community just opened up end of last year, so we haven't even hit our 1-year anniversary yet. We're an upscale independent living community in Cary, North Carolina. For those of you familiar with the Cary area, we're real close to Cocoa Booth Amphitheater. 138 fully equipped apartments. That means full kitchens, all appliances, washer dryers. That really kind of upscale luxury model apartment. Our community has an all-inclusive lifestyle. All meals are included. That's 3 meals per day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, plus multiple dining venues. All your utilities are included, which includes also Wi-Fi and cable TV, and plus all your services, your housekeeping, your maintenance, and transportation, and so forth. The community is beautiful and filled with some great amenities, such as a wine bar, a bistro, movie theater, indoor heated pool, fitness area, putting green, bocce ball court, outdoor fire pit, dog park, pickleball courts coming soon, and much more. So we're in a great location in Cary. We're off of Greenway walking trails that residents can walk right out our front door and walk on the Greenway walking trails, close to local restaurants, retail. real close to the local hospital as well, and other great points of interest. So that's kind of our community in a nutshell. And Tim and Gina, I think you wanted me to kind of segue from that to talk a little bit about what we're looking for right now in home care companies and so forth. So being a startup, so for us, we're growing day by day in our occupancy. So for us, as we're partnering with a home care company, we're looking for someone who's understands that model and willing to be along for the ride, because it's the business may not be there on the front end. We're not going to come in with the 90 to 100 clients that you would in an established community like Vincent's or David's potentially. We're going to be more the ones and twos, and it'll continue to grow from there. For our residents that are coming in very, very independent at this stage, but may start needing some of those services, they're looking for those short-term services that Tim and Gina were looking for. Those little pop-in services, they don't need the 3 to 4 hours of home care support. They just maybe need some medication and management, a little bit ADL support here or there, and that may be it at this stage in time. So for us, it's someone who's willing to grow with us and continue to expand as we expand. As far as what's important to it, there's a lot of great talking points that Tim and Jimmy mentioned about partnerships, and that is so key. You want to be a true partnership where when they come to the community, and I know when Tim and I talked earlier, he loved this quote, so I'm going to throw it out there again, is when you come to the community, you really shouldn't be able to sit there and go, well, they're part of that team, they're part of that team, they're part of that team. It should feel like one community team. Yeah, everyone may wear different name badges, but they're all working together for the common goal of the community. And some great examples of that would be, when our sales team is touring someone through the community, they should be able to stop by the home care office or see a caregiver walking through and feel free. The caregiver should feel comfortable talking to that potential resident about how great the community is and how they provide the services there. Same thing when we stop in with the therapy provider on site that does PT, OT, and speech. They should feel it's a true community support to give them what they need in the community. And that also, being part of that sales part and part of those events like Tim and Gina mentioned is so key, because that's also how you continue to build that trust from people looking at the community and they're referring to your community, seeing that you have all those levels of partnership in your community. Support someone so they can, to use a popular term, age in place and have those services available to them. And that helps them stay independent longer, which keeps them in your community, in my community longer. It keeps them on service with that home care agency longer. And it's really a mutual benefit type relationship. So.
That's great.
That's great, Matt. I appreciate that. And guys, we'll have an open town hall Q&A afterwards, which may be a good time, because you're going to get different perspectives. This is great. You got a new perspective and a seasoned perspective and a middle ground perspective. So next up in our is Vincent at the beautiful Arena property.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Tim and Gina, for inviting me today. It's my honor to be here and to be alongside Matt and David as well. First off, about Arena Bedford Falls. So we are up in North Raleigh, right on the North Raleigh Wake Forest line, just off of Falls of Noose Road, just barely north of Wake Med North. Similar, frankly, to David and to Matt, for independent living, some of the usual suspects relative to services. So full dining services, full housekeeping, full maintenance. We have a very nice outdoor lap pool, activities, robust activities, multi-purpose rooms available in the community for residents and families to come in and join. You see on my little piece there, we also have preferred partnerships right now with Live Well happens to be our current in-house preferred vendor relative to home care services. Beata is helping provide therapy services, and we are also partnered with a company called LifeSource, which are primary care, essentially physician care, that can offer in-apartment primary care to residents. And a couple of things that I would build on relative to what Matt kind of framed for us, and my guess is David will echo a lot of those same comments that Matt did, is this idea of integrated partnerships, this idea of seamlessness that Matt talked about relative to when you're in the community. I had a chance to meet with Deanna from Live Well for lunch earlier this week as we continue to develop our personal relationship and our kind of mutual goals here in the community. And this idea of seamlessness and that they become integrated in our community. And as well, to echo, I think, some comments that Tim and Gina both made, to seek out and look to develop those partnerships with other providers that we have in the community, specifically Bayada in this case, and our primary care physician services as well. And lots of possible referrals going back and forth between you all, as well as partners coming into the community. I wanted to build as well, I appreciate that, Tim opened up by saying that giving the three of us as executive directors an opportunity to speak from the heart. And heart is an important word to me. I think words matter in terms of the way that we are framing our services, the way that we present ourselves, the way that we present our communities. Gina was really intentional and sensitive, and I appreciate to identify that facilities is, or worse than that, institution. We never want to hear that. This idea of community. Yeah, right. Who wants to hear institutional food? Gotta love that one. The chef loves that when they hear that. I talk about that. So it's interesting. We had a tour with a prospective resident and his daughter just a couple of days ago. And I love the way that she framed this. And I told her I was going to coin it forever. That independent living communities are communities where residents need a little support and can take advantage of a lot of community. And I think that it goes to the spirit of what Tim and Gina were saying, and again, building on what Matt has already kind of launched for us, and I'm sure what David will build on, this idea of integration in the community and a sense of truly creating a sense of home, whatever home happens to be in that community. And each of our communities, though there's a lot of parallels, I'm sure, between the three of our communities, there are also unique differences that we try to carve out in, if perhaps the most important way is in the culture, in the feel. How are you made to feel when you walk in the door? And as a home care provider in our communities, you'll have a huge part and play a huge part relative to how people are feeling as they're coming into the communities. It's interesting, Matt talked about this point relative to potential penetration into the communities relative to what kind of caseload, what kind of service load you could have. So we have 181 apartments here, 204 residents today. We're sitting about 96, 97% occupancy. And we're 4 years old at this point. And as I was meeting with Deanna the other day, I think that we have somewhere around 10, 12 residents that are currently on services with Live Well. There may be a couple other agencies that maybe have some one-off service in the community now. I anticipate in our community, and 205 is going to be our sweet spot. I think we should stay right about there. And so I'm anticipating that as we age our community and as our residents age in place, and they realize that there are opportunities for these incremental customized pieces, as Gina and Tim have both identified, relative to what that little bit of support might look like for our individual residents. The more creative that you can be as providers, and the more open you can be to customizing to whatever that need happens to be, the more likely it is that that word will get out relative to the type of experiences that the support that you'll provide for those residents. And of course, that will get out to families as well. Trying to think if there's anything else I want to build on, a couple other, I think, pieces. Yeah, first off, I'd love to learn more about your POA strategy team there, Tim and Gina. That's something. It's interesting. I'm looking to bring in some speakers on exactly that topic with our residents now.
Oh, I bet I'll share it with you in the post. It's actually very popular. Yeah.
And so I guess that before passing it over to David, then this idea of, Matt talked about, though I'm not a big fan of the word closing the back door of the community. So we obviously want to try to maintain our own occupancy levels for our own kind of sustainability as a business. And likewise, you'll want to do that as providers. But really, when it goes to this idea of heart and trying to be in the business and trying to be providing services for the most significant goal would be to optimize the independence for our residents, for the human beings that are moving into our communities. And we could have an hours long debate and discussion about what does it look like to be an independent resident. There's a very broad spectrum, and I'm sure becoming broader all the time. This idea, however, that as you come in and you partner with us so we can optimize the experiences of our residents, to optimize whatever independence looks like for them, that's really our goal. And the more that you can connect with us that way, and that we can be asking the right questions to determine what customized services look like for our residents, the better off we'll all be. So again, thank you all for attending today. And Tim and Gina, thanks for inviting me.
Vincent, I have a question.
Yeah.
Have you, has Live Well been there the whole 4 years in your community?
Yeah, no. So they may, and I don't know if Dion is on. I know that members of her team, I think, are. So they may well have had a kind of entry in, but as I think that you and Tim both pointed out, it's got to be, and from an executive director's position, and again, I'm speaking, I'm sure, for Matt and David, we appreciate that this is a business for you, that having you come in for one resident for a 15-minute hit that you've driven across town and just spent $17 in gas just to get here doesn't make sense. And
Right.
so as we had this discussion with Live Well, Gina, to your question, about a year ago is where we really began to build up, I think, get close to a critical mass of
Yeah.
services. So it would make sense for them to have a dedicated care provider in here for a certain amount of time. And it's interesting, when I was actually having lunch with Deanna and mentioned CINCH to them, her eyes lit up and said, boy, it is so different to have to arrange and organize that within a community versus, as you talked about, going to an individual home where we're providing service to an individual person. So we've gotten to the point where we're old enough at 4 years in now, and obviously with our occupancy sitting at 200 residents, they have about a 5 or 6% penetration already, and that's enough to make it viable for them, and then only grow from there.
Right. Okay, thank you.
That's great. Well, thanks, Vincent.
Sure.
All right, Mr. David Sexton, we get to talk about Abbotswood.
At Stonehenge.
That's Stonehenge.
All right, we will do it. Thanks. So again, thank you for the opportunity to be a part of the webinar today. Appreciate that. And Vincent and Matt have done a great job talking about a lot about, so I'll echo some of the same things that you've heard from them. The history of our community is a little different, probably. Abbotswood at Stonehenge was built in the late 80s. Kisco Senior Living, our parent company, bought it in 95. And when it was first built, it was pretty much exclusively independent living. Over time, everybody knows, I think that the independent living market has changed. And so most of the people that come to independent living are not completely independent anymore. They may be mostly independent, but there are usually some things going on that have kind of triggered that move, whether it's health wise or socialization wise. So when Kisco bought the community, one of the objections that they heard was, well, I'm living here, I'm just gonna have to move out at some point if I start to need some help. So they started out with the idea, well, we're just gonna put a nurse on site and the caregiver too, and we're just gonna kind of there. Now, if anybody needs anything, nobody needed anything back then. Everybody was pretty good. Over time, that started to change. I came to work here 16 years ago in sales initially, and by the time I got here, that the little group that Kisco had started had grown in terms of what they were doing. And as we kind of analyzed after being here for a few years and analyzing where we were, we realized, well, gosh, a lot of where we are was attributable, the people coming in was attributable to the care that we were offering and that was being provided. But I'll come back to that. That's a little bit of a kind of the model that we ended up in. I'll explain kind of how I ended up on this panel, I guess. But our community is relatively small. There's 120 apartments. We have about 137 residents. 97 of those 137 residents, as of last count, received some kind of care services, either from our on-site partner, the Key, or maybe an outside. We have a few outside private duty providers as well. Our community is a lot like the others. A lot of nice amenities here, a lot of socialization options. One of the things that's a little unique here is we do have packages. So depending on whether somebody's coming in, if they're heavier on the independent end, if they need more care in terms of not even their health care, but just in terms of their day-to-day meals, housekeeping, we have a lot of options for that, and that can be customized. So we're big on customization here. That's one of the things that we feel like sets our community apart and the plan apart. And honestly, for those in independent living trying to partner with care, that's one of the big separators that you have from the traditional assisted living communities in the first place. So again, in our community, we're independent living, but we're registered through the Department of Health and Human Services as a multi-unit assisted housing with services community. What that does is it allows us to provide assisted living services to residents who need it through our partnership with an on-care provider, and that on-care provider is the Key, which was formerly Aware Senior Care, which is how I met Tim and Gina. But at our community, the goal for each of our residents is that hopefully they can live out the rest of their life once they move here, with the care they need being provided to them in their apartment without them having to relocate to a different part of the building, a different part of the community. And our goal is that, as Matt said, will they be able to age in place, which is typically what they were doing in their home. That was what their goal would have been to do there if it would have worked out. But when that becomes not the best option for them, we want to be able to step in and provide the things that they loved about being at home, but also solve some of the problems that are causing it to not be a good fit for them anymore. Our particular community, I feel like, is known for its friendly small town feel. So finding a care partner with a good culture fit for us is a big priority. At Abbotswood, we put our residents first. The goal, we say, is we want to look for ways to say yes to whatever it is they're asking us. That's kind of our goal. So anybody that we're working with, our expectation is that they're going to have that same attitude, that same priority in terms of that. And so in order to do that, you need not just the same attitude, but you also have to have the right information, which is where CINCH comes in. So we believe that if we're prioritizing meeting the needs of our residents and appreciating our associates and community partners that we're working with, who are taking care of them, then we've got the framework that we need in place to be able to have a successful business that doesn't feel like a business, doesn't really operate so much like a business. So how I met Tim and Gina was, we'll give you the Cliff Notes version. I mentioned that when Kisco had first bought the community at Abbotswood, they had their own care in place, and eventually they decided, you know what, they weren't going to be in the care business. It wasn't going to be a model they wanted to do, so they decided they would kind of outsource that. So they did, and we went through a couple of ones that were there were some challenges in terms of trying to get used to staff that wasn't Kisco staff, and kind of working with an outside provider. And so we did that, and we had one in place we were working with at the time that COVID hit. And COVID was certainly, as everybody knows, was an eye opener for everybody. And it certainly was for us in terms of we ran into some. So we had already been kind of making plans and looking at making a change, and had been talking to Tim and Gina, and had really settled on them as who we wanted to work with. Felt like that from early on, we had good communication, and I'll again can share some of the things that they did that I felt like resonated with me and connected with us. But so we had already kind of settled on them, and then when COVID really started to kick in, we had a pretty much a crisis that happened with the provider in terms of not being able to provide care to the individuals that had COVID, and so. At that time, everything about COVID was scary. Everything about it was new and unknown. And to us, to residents, to families, to the healthcare industry overall, and it was very tense. And so the care provider that we had really just kind of took a hands-off approach to it. And for me and for what we offer in this environment, that wasn't what we needed. And so, in talking with Tim and Gina, um, I don't know if they were the ones we were referring to. They said, "Hey, we need you in tomorrow," but we definitely had conversations to speed up the timeline for what we were looking for when we were looking to transition. And they really came in and saved the day. And from the start, there was a true partnership. Like we were kindred spirits. As I mentioned, throughout the whole process, they listened. They were truly interested in understanding what we valued. And then they looked for ways to share how our values and philosophies were aligned. And in areas where they weren't, which weren't many, but in areas where they weren't, it's just like, okay, well, what do we need to do? What's going to be our workaround in this? And as Vincent said, we understand that's a business model for them. It's a business model for us as well. We like to try to operate not so much in the business world from day to day in terms of kind of shielding our residents and families and even some of our associates from that, and really focus on the care and the lifestyle that we're trying to present. But there's that aspect to it. So we just kind of always had open communication that was solution oriented. It was forward thinking and forward looking to try to figure out, okay, where do we go from here? What do we need to do next? And the key to our success here at Abbottswood, honestly, it's our partnership with the Key that we have now as our 24/7 on-site care provider. We were fortunate that when Tim and Gina moved out of the home care business and into more of the CINCH software business, they did the same thing. I think in their process that we had been through with them, they tried to find somebody who was like-minded, who shared their vision and shared a lot of their core philosophies. And so the transition, because of that, to the Key was a pretty easy one for us. So the Key is on site with us 24/7. And as I said, we depend on their ability to provide and maintain customized care plans for all of our residents who need it. And CINCH was and continues to be a game changer for us, as opposed to the prior care partners. We had more of a rigid care structure and not the ability to be more fluid with pricing and, again, customizable based on what they need, what that individual needs. So here we talk a lot about the Abbottswood family. We treat our care partners like they're part of our family because they are. We couldn't do what we do without them. And I'll tell y'all today what I've told many others about Tim and Gina. I'll never forget what they did for our community when we were in a time of real crisis. They showed themselves to be family first through Aware Senior Care, and they continue to do that now with CINCH software. So thank you for your time and your interest today. And Tim and Gina, thanks again.
Thank you, David.
Thanks,
Thank
Tim.
you.
Hey,
Thanks.
David, we do have a question. So since you have 24/7 care, for your residents, a question is, well, why doesn't the community provide care for their own, like using your own staff people? What's the benefits of using an outside agency?
So there are legalities to that in terms of if you're in an independent living community, we're not really able to provide care. So we do the room and board, the activities, the social part of it, but we're not able to provide care. So it's a necessity for us with how we're licensed.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Good question. That's
Very good question. Well, how about there in the audience? I know you've got this great team assembled, and David and Matt, Vincent, thank you. You can understand what I said about heart. Any questions? It's a great opportunity to fire away at an executive director. And
we do have one from Rob Rister, and I think it'd probably be best if Rob, you just want to unmute yourself and ask your question. So it's
all right, Rob Rister.
Yeah, Reister. Yeah, there you go. I appreciate
Reister. I apologize, Rob.
good.
I apologize.
I appreciate you guys taking your time to organize this meeting today, and I really appreciate the director's time. I'm curious. I'm in 5 communities already. I have a support on-site program. I'm partnered with Atria in 4 of those buildings in 3 states. So in the beginning, I think it's going to be helpful if you could share. For me, I would love to have heard how to approach you in the beginning 3 years ago. I think as new home care agency owners, they would need to hear how to approach you. And I got a few questions. Is what do you want to hear to open up your mind and speak to your heart to listen, to maybe partner up with the home care agencies. Because I will tell you what, you talk about that partnership. That's a great word, and I wish all home care agencies would go into your communities like that, because that's what it is. I think it's important. The executive directors and I, we have each other's cell phones. We're constantly talking to each other at least once a week, what's happening in those communities. So I think I want to hear from you guys what it is you want to hear from home care agencies when they approach you for the first time. And then I got a couple follow-ups.
So I'll launch for us, and again, my guess is that we have a whole lot of alignment between the three of us, but that you ask us what it is that we're looking for before telling us what you do, and that sets the stage relative to customization and finding out who we are and what we believe that our needs are. And as Tim kind of slated it for us, we've got Matt at a brand new community, David at a very established community, and I'm a little closer to Matt, but still at 4 years. And so what that looks like, what our needs are going to be very different at this stage. So ask that question first, and then we can take it from there. We'll get around to what you do eventually.
I like that.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think Vincent nailed it on the head there. I think that, and the only thing I would add is what was mentioned numerous times throughout the presentation too, is come into it from a standpoint of truly you're going to be a partner in the community. I'm sure I speak with Vincent Davis. We have a lot of people stopping by, and I'm just not talking about home care, about a lot of other stuff that want us to partner with, buy this, do that, and so forth. So, and we're always happy to talk with folks, but come in to what Vincent said as well, but also be ready to truly be a partner for that community, and be that kind of second arm of the community and so forth, and be really ingrained into, like David said, the family atmosphere of that community.
And I would just add again, just doing your homework in advance. Know a little something about us before you come in, instead of coming in like the proverbial blank slate is helpful. I don't expect you to know all the ins and outs, but it means something if somebody's taken the time to do a little bit of homework on you up front and have some idea or some perception of what they think, but then again, that listen to find out what it is, and how that matches up with what you read or what you figured out, from doing your homework in advance.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think we need to hear on our side, what you guys are looking to hear. So following up with that, in the other communities I was in the very beginning, there was other home care providers in there, whether it would be independent caregivers coming in and out of there, or a company on site, so to speak. What is it that we could do to get you to open up your eyes, or arms for competition, or what would that look like for you guys if you already have existing partner in there? Is it just, hey, wait till we break up, wait till they fail? What would that look like? How could we get your attention that way?
that's a really good question.
Yeah.
Way to go, Rob.
That is a really good question. Matt, David, I'll let you guys take that one.
So look, I'll say this for Rabbit's Wood. Vincent beat me too. I was going to say earlier, the hard questions go to Matt and Vincent, and then I did not get that out in time, so that's my fault. But no, I say, look at ours realistically. We have a lot on staff, so we're not looking to change partners altogether unless we're at a crisis point, which we were. That's how we ended up with the where, and now the key. So for us, we're not looking at, but by the same token, things change over time. Our relationships are not all, they don't always stay where they are. The needs, things come up all the time, and so as our needs change at the community, as we love our partners, we work with them, and we go to bat thinking that when a problem comes up, we're going to figure out how to solve that with the partner that we have. But sometimes that may change through circumstances, situations. It may be through the vendor that we're dealing with, the part that we're partnered with. Something may change, ownership may change on their part, something outside of our control. So we're always, I think, if you're planning ahead. You're not looking to change, but you're always just trying to see what's out there, be available what's out there, and be ready to partner with whoever you can in a certain situation. And there are even again for a place as with as many people on case loads as we have here. There are situations that are just kind of one-offs, and so being able to go get some help from somebody in that situation, sometimes that's the long view of what you're doing if you're in this for the right reason. And again, we understand it's got to make sense financially for you, but if you're going to be around for a long term, maybe you help out in some of those situations, and that's how you start to prove yourself. And then those are the names that you remember. Those are the people you go to when something else comes up, or when another community is looking for somebody. That's one of the names you give them then. So
Yeah.
I think those are benefits of that for us. But yeah, in our case, honestly, we don't go into things every day thinking, oh, who's the next new partner for us? We want to make it work, because it's traumatic to make a big change at any time, much less in the middle of COVID. So yeah.
So I build on Dave. Thanks for framing that. And Matt probably wants to cue in, but I would say that one tip as well for communities just kind of, or for companies still building out, is working with discharge planners at hospitals, getting to know the social workers, because even as we have established relationships, to David's point, to Matt's point, with preferred providers right now, that as we begin to learn about, hear about you, hear about your reputation, learn about the heart and soul that you're providing, we know that there are other good communities and good companies out there. We also need to be aware that we're trying to make a good relationship with one provider here that's trying to make a go of a sustainable business. So getting to know those other opportunities where we can learn and you can build some reputational pieces. And I would just say right off the bat as well, and I assume that regardless of the relationships that we have, I'll have a couple other agencies in reserve, because the big moment that comes when we need 24/7 coverage, we need it now. Because there's some trigger event, and it may well be that our preferred vendor or our preferred relationship may or may not be able to take that case. If they're not, if you can step in and do that, that is a great way to at least create awareness and establish yourself as somebody that's going to be reliable. To David's point, as he was sharing the whole COVID piece with Tim and Gina, when we really need you, if you can be there, that will go miles.
It's amazing to say that with Matt, with Atria. Maybe you'll appreciate this. That's how I got with the first Atria community before I branched out to the other four. Is it was a chaos, and it was just timing, right?
Yeah.
The provider that they had in there wasn't doing a good job, and Matt's equal in an Atria community was open enough to say, yeah, we'll try. And then it just kind of you build that relationship, improve yourself, and then expand.
Yeah. The only thing I would add was something that Tim and Gina mentioned earlier in their slideshow is having a presence. As Tim mentioned, I never got the opportunity to actually have Tim and Gina in my community. We talked about it a lot of times, but what happened through that relationship with partnership is I knew that they were a great company. They had a great reputation. And then I, heard my colleague in the marketplace, David, was having some challenges and looking to make some changes. And I said, hey, you should go talk to David Sexton. And so it was through having that constant presence and having that relationship with the community that you're not even in really yet, that led to them being good to go into affluence. So I think being present at those communities, having those relationships, even if you're not really on site at those communities anyway, can help pay dividends. And probably, Rob, that's kind of probably somewhat how you were able to get that position with Atria, is when they had the knowledge of you in the marketplace, and they said, yeah, well, come on, let's give it a try, because they knew about your reputation there. So that plays a whole lot of having that presence around the marketplace.
Yeah. I got one more question for you, Matt. So we understand. Let me start that whole sentence over. Wow. Okay. So we understand correctly that you do not currently have an agency you're working with yet. So the question is, have you received proposals yet? If so, what do those agencies not have that that you would like to see them have in order to be this preferred provider?
Good question. So we do have an on-site provider, but again, we're so new. It's not really ramped up to any really established level yet. We work with Wake Med Hospitals. They have a personal care services arm. That's their home care arm, and they're on site. But we have other organizations that are in our building too for individual type care. The key is that you've heard David mention. Is there another one here in the Triangle Market? Golden Harmony has some residents here in our community. What as far as so. Being new, I talked about earlier, we do get a lot of pop-ins and people coming to ask to talk with me and so forth. But I think when I'm having those conversations, what the things that I hear, for lack of better terms, that are kind of turn-offs or make me kind of go away from that is if there's a lack of flexibility, if there's a lack of understanding kind of the more care structure and IL is going to have. If someone comes in and says, hey, we're rigid and it's a 3 to 4 hour minimum, no matter what, I go, well, I'm honest with a lot of times. I don't know how well that's going to work in our community. I'll keep you in mind if we have other type of cases where that may be more applicable, but the lack of flexibility is one that really once I hear that, it kind of throws a red flag up for me.
Thank you very much.
Okay, well, our grandfather clock just struck 2. But I'd like to thank everybody that was attending. I hope you got you can see how much from the heart this whole business is. And you got 3 great executive directors who just, again, I know I'm repeating myself, but we just think so highly of them. And you can see if you had your mom or dad, you want to go to a community, those are the guys you want to go into their community. They get it. They understand. It's all about family.
Yeah.
And good advice. So we'll add one more thing to Rob's great question. We actually helped out the home care agency that we replaced at David's property. They were struggling, and one of our techniques in the market is there's no one provider. Okay, there's lots of people need. We worked and partnered with other home care agencies, and they asked for help, and we came in and we were actually staffing the majority of David's. He didn't know it. He found out later. But to the point, Rob, that everybody needs a backup plan.
Yeah.
So when we were in David's community, Beata was there. We got along fine because sometimes we couldn't take the case. So you always, that's a great way to just start getting known in the community as a good player, as a good partner, so seek those other cool agencies that are out there, be friends, work together. And then once you get into community, Rob, you got a beautiful situation. You have references.
Yeah.
So we leverage those too. David's like, who can I speak to? Well, you can speak to this executive director, this executive director. So you build on that. For those that are not in it, it's hard to get in your first one. Be patient, be persistent, be honest. And good things happen. And it's a great home care market segment. It really is, because it's repeatable. It's its own little world from your home care. Once you get in it, caregivers love it. Your staff love it. It's very known. Whereas we know regular home care, things can change on a dime. So thank you. We have another webinar coming up. We'll be promoting this. I think you might be interested in. It's kind of how do you find David and how do you find these communities and how do you approach them? Some of Rob's questions. We're going to focus on that. We have example tools to use. And again, I will send an email out. There will be the recording, and I'll send you those sample materials that we had. So
thank you all for coming.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. And send us, if you have questions, feel free to send us emails.
Yeah, if you have a question and it's towards David or Vincent, fire it to me. I'll make sure it gets to them, and we'll get answers for you. So God bless and thank you, everybody. We'll see you again. David,
thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Happy Thanksgiving,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.